Join us for lively discussion about the A-State community. Each week, we'll meet with a variety of faculty, staff, and students to discuss all things Arkansas State University. Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections.
Hello everyone, welcome to A-State Connections on ASU-TV. I'm Allison Frazier, a Strategic Communications student here at Arkansas State University. Students in Video Production 3 classes at Arkansas State spent a semester working on a documentary. 3 students have been working together on a documentary called Lockdown, which tells the 2015 story of the university being placed on lockdown when an armed man drove on campus, causing a tense standoff with the police. Thankfully, no shots were fired and no one was hurt. Telling us more about this documentary are all members of the documentary team, Zephaniah, Mondy, and Benjamin Morris. Hello, everyone. Welcome to A-State Connections. We're so excited to have you here. But as you mentioned before, this is not the entire team. So before we get into all the questions, can you tell us who is all a part of your documentary team?
Yes, also working with us is Caton, Kobe, and Luke. Caton is working as our field producer. He's been the person who's been grabbing all the equipment, setting up some of the interviews. Kobe has been our social media guy. He's been running our Instagram, and he has been doing a spectacular job of taking photos of our meetings and stuff like that. And Luke is our primary editor.
I love that. I just wanted to give everyone their props. We talked about that a little bit before the show. But before we jump into the documentary itself, can you tell us a little bit more about yourselves, your majors, and what brought you to Arkansas State?
Well, my name is Zephaniah Mondy, and I'm a senior here at Arkansas State University. My major is creative media production with an emphasis in sports media. And honestly, I just love anything sports related. You know, I grew up playing sports, and, you know, obviously I'm not going professional, but it's one way to still connect with the sports is kind of covering them and being able to break them down in a broadcast sense. And I've also done broadcasting pretty much all my life because my family, we own a radio station in Eastern Arkansas. So I've just always been around broadcasting, always been around sports, so it just makes sense.
Hi, my name is Ben Morris, and I'm also creative media production, but with emphasis in corporate media. But over these last couple years, I've definitely been taking more of a sports aspect of it. I've started doing some stuff up here at ASU's ESPN. I technical direct and sometimes direct up there for them, and, you know, put our stuff live on air at ESPN+. It's been a lot of fun. I've kind of just wanted to do that as I go on through life.
I love it. Thank you guys for giving us a little introduction for yourselves. So for the show today, we really want to know about what you worked so hard on. So can you tell us a little bit, a synopsis of your documentary?
Well, yeah, the documentary itself, like you said, it's about back in 2015 when a man came on campus and just it was a kind of a terrifying day because it was so much uncertainty at the time, and it's about the standoff with the police, and the campus was on lockdown, and I mean we see so much of that in, you know, today's day, that just trying to keep that awareness and how to stay safe, how to, you know, prevent these, because in the documentary you're also trying to take a psychology standpoint on why these things happen. Like, why do people feel the urge to do these type of harm to people, you know? So we're trying to take multiple angles at the documentary, but at the same time be able to relate because the threat is there every day. So.
And the way that we've kind of been doing that has been getting different perspectives in interviews. So far, we've got the chief of police, we have got the head of communications, both of which who were active at the time. We've got Jonathan Reeves, who's a communications professor here, and we got I forget his name, but he was also a part of like the radio and communications team at the time who actually streamed the event while it happened.
So unfortunately, instances like this have become so popular. And with that being said, what drew you to this story specifically, with this being such a trend nowadays? What drew you to this story to tell?
Well, I mean, it's scary, honestly, because it's kind of something that's out of your control.
Right.
And I feel like, you know, the more time goes on, it just seems like it's becoming more common. And bringing the awareness to the threat is a big deal because you can let your guard down a lot of times. And you have to, like, Arkansas State does a really good job of having trainings and having awareness for these type of events to make sure people are ready for, like, if hopefully it never happens, but for if that time ever came. So just bringing awareness to it and it's nothing that I've been in a lockdown before at a previous school that I was at. So I mean, it's a scary feeling because you're kind of in the dark. But Arkansas State does a really good job of putting out alerts and making sure that students are well informed on any situation going on, even for tornadoes or anything, you know. So I think having a school that's really connected with their students in a way of getting alerts out and making sure they're not left in the dark is a really big deal.
I also kind of really like, Z was the one who pitched the initial idea for the documentary, but whenever he pitched it, something that I was really excited to get to know, and something that I've got a greater appreciation by doing the documentary is why we have all these safety, like, you know, why we have all these safety precautions there. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's ever been annoyed by, you know, like the locks on the doors you have to, like, you know, put your key cards up to,
Right.
you know, certain, you know, security measures around campus. But it's through doing this documentary I've learned this is more than necessary.
I agree. So, with you learning so much about this issue through creating this documentary together, what do you wish our society did more to help prevent this issue? You talk about how Arkansas State works really hard. What do you wish our society would follow suit with that our school and campus does?
Well, I feel like okay, you have to get to the root cause of like why this type of things happen. And I think it goes back to mental health. You know, there's people that are going through things that are, you know, behind closed doors, and I don't know what it is, but something just causes them to want to just harm other people. So I think attacking the root of the problem is, I think that's probably the best way to kind of combat it. But I mean, you don't really know if people don't speak up about their mental health. So I think pushing more awareness about mental health and offering more than what they're, because we offer, I mean, A-State offers a lot of, you know, services for that, but kind of just pushing that as hard as they can, I think that'd be good. I think a lot of other schools should do the same.
And yeah, I was going to think of more like the security precautions we have at A-State. We have so many because, I mean, we already had a whole lot in 2015, but after that incident, A-State really doubled down. And I'm even thinking, you know, also like, you know, high schools and some other stuff like that, you know, they don't have security alerts on your phone most times. They test out, you know, over your phone. They don't have, you know, key cards that, you know, students get to, you know, unlock the door. A lot of little stuff here and there that, you know, whenever it builds up might be a great defense measure for whenever it does happen. Because the unfortunate reality is that something like this, even if it's not, you know, an active shooter, somebody is going to get mad and is going to try to break into that school. And so I think having a really great reaction system, something that Arkansas State does a really great job of that you don't see everywhere.
What would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned within creating this documentary? You've learned so much knowledge, not only on creating documentaries in general, but just this overall issue. What would you say individually each? What is the thing that you've learned the most of this process?
Well, I think like there's a couple people that we've interviewed, especially like in the law enforcement aspect. It's so much that goes on like behind
Closed
doors that
doors,
we don't see in terms of like what the law enforcement have to like be prepared for. And I think just learning the different perspectives, I love talking to people. I love learning about people, and just learning different perspectives is just so fascinating to me because there's more out there than just what I know and what I see, you know? So I think just learning about how, because I've always been fascinated with, you know, police and law enforcement, like they protect us every day, but just learning what they actually have to just be aware of and what they have to go through to keep our campuses safe, to keep our city safe. I think that has been the most fascinating thing for me personally.
For me, it's kind of on the same token of law enforcement. We interviewed the chief of police at UPD here, kind of like I mentioned earlier, and something that was, I want to say ironic, but they were actually in a meeting or in a practice, whatever you want to call it, with a bunch of different schools and actually, you know, with different departments about, you know, a public shooting when it happened. So they were all in an office at the union whenever somebody started doing donuts outside the union with, you know, a weapon. And it really brought to my attention just how rehearsed a whole lot of these facilities are in what to do with all of it. There's so much stuff that goes on throughout the year that we don't see of these people who are here to protect us on what they do to make sure that they can do their job, to make sure that they know that we know what to do whenever these situations come here, that I also think a lot of our students kind of take for granted. You know, a lot of people I've seen get annoyed whenever we get the 15th security alert of the week, or we see everybody has to go to, you know, different training courses at the beginning of your freshman year. You know, it can be a bother at the time, but I'm sure that if anything like that was to happen, there was nothing we wouldn't give to have those situations in place.
That's true. Is there any other perspectives that you learned about besides law enforcement that you'd like to share with the audience about this documentary that stood out to you?
The biggest one to me was the media aspect, and that's coming from a media perspective. It was very interesting to talk to Mr. Reeves and to talk to a few of the other people who were actually having to cover the event, and what kind of resources they were having to rely on at the time. As I mentioned earlier, the guy started streaming. It was because he didn't have a camera on him. All he had was his phone. His phone ran out of space. And so he was just doing everything he could to get the coverage out there so people could stay informed. And talking with Professor Reeves, he was doing so much just from within, like, you know, the KASU place, where he was just working with whatever limited information because he was locked in there. They're saying, hey, you're not leaving, it is too dangerous. And so just seeing how all of these people worked with what they had was really fascinating.
Yeah, and also just the aspect of the misinformation that gets, you know, brought out. Because when you're in a panic situation like that, you know, people, I mean, I remember one of the officers was talking about how people was saying they saw, you know, they saw this and they saw that, but in reality it really wasn't. So when you're just in a panic mode, you just have to have people that's composed and that's able to deliver accurate information to keep everyone else safe.
So when it comes to the functionality of the documentary itself, what were your individual roles that you had?
Well, I'm actually the director of the overall documentary. Ben, Caden Morris, he's our producer, and Luke Morris, he's our editor.
Flipped, I'm the producer, and Caden is the field producer.
Right, he's the field producer. Right, and obviously Kobe is he's managing our social media. He's getting us right in that department. So I think when everyone's doing their job like correctly, it just forms perfectly.
I love that.
And I also want to add that as well as being the director, Z is also doing our voiceover, and he's going to be, you know, heavily involved in the script. He's going to be the person doing the voiceovers, and yeah, I just wanted to kind of quickly shine on that he's doing a little bit more than what's required of a typical director.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to continue this conversation with you guys. Zephaniah, Mondy, and Benjamin Morris join us here on A-State Connections. We'll be right back with more A-State Connections after this.
Students should watch ASU-TV just to see the creativity that a college student can get. The creativity that some of these students have is truly amazing. Getting that experience can really just take you further, and I feel like our program does that for a lot of students.
I think one of the things I learned at Arkansas State was life is 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you respond to it, and that's just something that I live by.
A-State is home, and they're going to treat you like you're a part of the family.
ASU-TV, shows like Red Wolf Roundtable, ASU-TV News, Westside Football, and more. Gain real-life experience while doing what you love. Get involved with ASU-TV today.
Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections.
Welcome back to A-State Connections on ASU-TV. I'm Allison Frazier, and we are continuing our conversation with Zephaniah, Mondy, and Benjamin Morris about their upcoming documentary. Thank you guys so much again for joining us today. I cannot wait to jump back into our conversation. So when it comes to the creation process of this documentary, can you tell us a little bit about the creative aspect that was behind it? Because I know you had the idea, so what was the process like in between before you got that product out to the audiences?
Well, we definitely wanted to make the audience feel like they're a part of the documentary.
Yeah.
You know, so early on in the documentary, you're gonna see where like the first opening of it is, is breaking news. It's what you see when you first get that breaking news that there's a lockdown or a shooter threat or whatever. It's grabbing that attention, and it's kind of inviting the audience in onto what's going on. And not only that, but we also, like we said earlier, wanted to get the multiple perspectives, because when something like that's going on, everyone knows where they were when it happened.
Right.
So not only that, but also just trying to be creative with it, and because it's about a 30-minute documentary, so you can fit in a lot of information, and there's a lot of time. You have plenty of time to work with in that sense. So I think getting those perspectives, trying to make sure that the audience feels like they're a part of it, and also getting, like I said earlier, the psychological aspect of it, trying to figure out why this happens and what causes people to want to do these type of things, and just trying to be creative as much as we can, and being very informative, so the audience can walk away with not only just the awareness of it, but they also learn something. Because when you get those perspectives of like law enforcement or people that was in the media that worked at the time, you learn stuff that you originally really wouldn't already know, because like these stuff happens behind closed doors when you're not, So I think it's just really interesting to get those perspectives. That's my favorite part of the whole documentary, is just listening to other people, how they went about that day, what they did, and how they was like, it's a part of their training, really. It's a part of their training. So I love that aspect of it.
And touch on the interview process just a little bit. Of course, it starts off just by getting in contact with those people, going to their office, emailing them. And a lot of people are going to say no, which was something I guess I didn't really expect going into it. Even as a third-year creative media producer, a lot of people in past projects are really excited to be on camera to do it. But given the seriousness of this documentary, especially if you're like talking about the psychology of it or personal experience, how you believe situations like this should be handled, not a whole lot of people are too thrilled to put their name on their opinion on that and just put it online forever. So between myself and Kate, we probably got in touch with 12 to 15 individuals trying to get interviews. And we maybe heard back from 8 or 6, and then we probably actually followed through with an interview, so currently 4 with 1 more lined up. Whenever we actually did the interviews, I'd like to go in with 10 to 15 questions. And the harder part of that is knowing that despite if everybody gives stellar answers to all 10 to 15 questions, we're probably only going to use about 2 from each person.
Right.
But we're still pretty, at that point, we were still pretty early on in the creating process. We need to know what kind of story we're going to be able to tell with the interviews that we have. So we brought them all in this room, interviewed them kind of in the same area, and we would ask them just about, hey, what was your time like beforehand? What was, leading up to the event? Where were you when it happened? How has this changed you? How has this changed A-State? Questions like that. And through that, we were able to get a bunch of different, like he said, perspectives of, hey, I saw this, I was here, we had done this beforehand. That's how we learned that, hey, we actually had our UPD who was going through active shooter protocol when it happened, who were just in the building right outside. And it was a really cool and interesting to be able to get firsthand accounts from all these people who were heavily involved in the incident.
Speaking of those no's, a lot of people may be hesitant to either get involved or watch a documentary because of how heavy it is, like you were saying, Ben. So why do you think that while this topic is so heavy, why is it so important that people do indulge in the message of your documentary?
Well, I feel like the threat is always there,
Right.
It's very similar to like severe, like if you live in the South, severe weather, it's gonna the threat is always there, it's gonna happen somewhere. You're just hoping it's not like where you're at, So I think having that awareness about the threat is a big deal. It's definitely a heavy subject, but you really got to be prepared and always be ready for if anything bad happens to your campus or wherever you're at, having that knowledge and that training can save your life and also can save other people's lives as well. So you kind of have to keep that into account as well.
And to kind of continue on that, like, being prepared in yourself, if you went back to 2014 and asked all the students on Arkansas State University if they thought that an active shooter would be here during their time at A-State, almost all of them would have said no. And I know that because now in 2026, you could go around to everybody and ask them the same question. They would all probably say no, even though we had an incident, 11 years ago. Well, it's because it was 11 years ago. Yeah. That's the past. That doesn't happen here, Yeah. And I think this documentary, especially among students on A-State, not all of them probably know about the incident in 2015.
Yeah, I didn't before I was going to interview you guys today.
And so I think this is really going to help with our students understand that this is not an issue that's so far from home like a whole lot of us think it is. And also to touch on that, because of a lot of people, especially, around in Arkansas, a lot of our active shooter lockdowns come from false calls. Yeah. We had a false call not too long after the initial incident. I think it was like the next year or so. Fayetteville, I believe, also had a false call earlier this year. There have been a few false calls around, high schools in the area, a few empty threats. And so it kind of has desensitized us a lot to the issue. Something that I actually learned when interviewing the UPD officer was that there is an active shooter just about every day somewhere in the country. Whether someone's life is actually taken or if it's like at Arkansas State University where the situation was handled, or even if it's just a real threat that the authorities were able to put down fast enough, it happens way more than we think because, America's a really big place. It's going to happen, if not here in a different state. And just because we don't see it doesn't make the problem any less real.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that because I know that with this issue that while it did happen in 2015, it's happened time and time again and it happens every single day. Is there a perspective that you wish you would have gotten on this documentary that you weren't able to receive because of those no's or because, just time?
The biggest one was the chancellor of the time. So back in 2015, we had a different chancellor, and he was fired. Go look it up yourself if you want. But he was fired. And so I thought it would be a really, really cool perspective to get. And a little behind the scenes is our professor who we're doing this for probably knew that this was not a guy we were getting and said, hey, you get him, you get an A. So talk about extreme motivation.
Yeah, talk about
so
trying to be
I look him up.
persistent.
I get his name, and I start to track the dude. And the last time I could find his employment was back in 2023. He was working for a college in, I believe, Tennessee, where he was also terminated there. I look him up on LinkedIn. I look him up on social media, and I cannot find any trace of the guy. And so I am just completely all right, this is just not someone we're going to get because I just had no way of contacting him. I was going through A-State's Instagram, looking at every single follower, like, okay, maybe he hasn't unfollowed. It's like,
maybe he's got somebody I can find.
maybe I can find like his wife or something on here. It's like, I just could not find him for the life of me, though.
For me personally, I would have liked to get the perspective of the man himself who came on campus. Just to ask him, like, what were you thinking?
Right,
I would love to go to the actual source of the problem and try to figure out, what drove him to do this, what was going on in his life that, because typically if someone wants to do that type of harm, there's something going on.
With them,
Exactly. So I would have loved to ask him directly and just try to get his perspective straight from the source on why.
Yeah, because oftentimes those people don't feel seen because if I know this person in particular was struggling with those mental health issues, and so maybe you had the opportunity to highlight that story, would have been able to help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one perspective that I 100% would have loved to have. Yeah.
Is there anything really quickly that you would have done differently, you think, about this documentary? Although it's obviously so great, is there something else you think you should have done? Or taken in a different direction?
Well, I feel like we're kind of in the direction that we definitely wanted to go.
Perfect.
We always could have gotten more interviews of different perspectives. But I think overall, we're right in the direction we want to be at in terms of informing people, keeping people interested in the topic. People that are not interested, trying to bring them in to the conversation as well. But I think we're definitely in the right direction. Me personally, I would like to get more of the mental health aspect of it.
Yeah.
But the documentary is still in the works, so I think we'll be able to make that happen.
Love that.
And
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. That will do for this edition of A-State Connections. I want to again thank my guests, Zephaniah and Benjamin, for joining me today. I also want to say a huge thank you to the instructor of Sports, Media, and Mass Communications, Mr. Dustin Sullivan, and his amazing students in Video Production 1 who are behind the scenes and running the whole entire show today. I could not do it without them. Special thank you to our producer today, Mr. Jonathan Reeves, and our broadcast engineer, Aiden Barber, and graduate assistant, Reese Barnett, for their help on this show. Thank you so much for watching.